I love Ghostbusters. As a child, it was up there with my most watched movies, and as an adult, it remains in my top 10 movies of all time. Its perfect balance of humour, character interaction, fun action, and fantastic production design all culminate in one of the greatest comedies of all time. In short, it's a masterpiece. But this video is about its sequel, 1989's Ghostbusters 2. So why then am I banging on about the original? Well, I want you to fully understand, before we go deep into things, that I'm completely aware that Ghostbusters 2 is pretty much in every way weaker than the original. It reuses ideas, has a weaker and more disconnected story, and falls prey to some overt levels of cheese that were much better balanced in the original. Ghostbusters 2 is worse than Ghostbusters 1. That much is true. But is it really as bad as many out there would have you believe? For me, no, and I actually think all in all, it's a pretty solid sequel. So let's talk about why. The first Ghostbusters released in 1984 to huge critical and commercial success, even earning 2 Oscar nominations for Best Song and Best Visual Effects. This tale of schlubby supernatural exterminators would begin as an outlandish script from one of the film's stars, Dan Aykroyd, and would be reworked alongside another, Harold Ramis. Directed by Ivan Reitman, the movie was nothing short of lightning in a bottle, with amazing performances from some of the best American comedic actors of the time, a wonderful pace and tone, and superb supporting characters like Sigourney Weaver's Dana Barrett, Rick Moranis' Lewis, and of course, Annie Potts' Janine.
You gonna answer that?
Quit better jobs than this. Ghostbusters, what do you want?
However, despite such massive success, it would be 5 years before we saw a sequel, and when Ghostbusters 2 finally dropped in 1989, excitement was palpable. All the cast had returned, alongside Reitman, and the script had once again been written by Aykroyd and Ramis. However, it seems that things hadn't been as plain sailing this time around, and it soon became apparent why the sequel took so long. In short, huge hurdles plagued pre-production, placing the sequel alarmingly close to development hell, a location that its planned sequel would inevitably find itself in and eventually succumb to. Aykroyd, known for his large, eccentric and outlandish scripts, turned in several ideas that the studio refused to agree to, causing massive rewrites, one of which apparently included Dana Barrett being kidnapped and taken to a Scottish castle. What the fuck? Lengthy negotiations for budget and pay would drag things on even longer, and various other hurdles would add subsequent delays. Such a reputation has in no small part contributed to a general notion that several members of the cast were uninterested in the film, despite appearing in it, although I personally am not certain that this is anything beyond speculation. Finally, the film would also underperform at the box office, and while still being in profit, the studio would be disappointed in its performance overall. So with such a reputation, messy production, and lukewarm reception, what is there to love about Ghostbusters 2? Well, for my money, a fair bit. One of the greatest strengths of Ghostbusters 2 is where we find each member of the gang at the film's opening. At the end of the first film, not only did they save the city, but they also seemingly silenced all skeptics and were accepted as genuine defenders against the perils of the paranormal. However, at the opening of Ghostbusters 2, just 5 short years later, we find the team fragmented and somewhat forgotten. Venkman has embraced the Z-list celebrity lifestyle, allowing it in turn to indulge his ego. Ray has opened his occult bookstore, and only a few of the gang get together for what appears to have devolved from lavish key to the city style ceremonies to children's birthday parties.
You know, my dad says you guys are full of crap.
Jason, well, some people have trouble believing in the paranormal.
No, he just says you guys are full of crap, and that's why you went out of business.
Firstly, such events are in no way disingenuous to these characters. It makes sense that Ray would open a weird bookstore and Venkman would end up as some TV hack, if you look at who they are established to be in the first movie. Second, the fact that they have been largely forgotten by the public is absolutely brilliant, and in fact, quite ahead of its time. So often in movies, heroes are heralded as immortal saviors, when in reality, we've all experienced the public's propensity to get bored, move on, or find new heroes to admire and adore. This look at the harsher side of celebrity is an excellent direction to take the sequel in, and allows for some great comedic setups and gags. Moreover, this is played into further by the fact that they are all a little out of shape and rusty, leading to probably the film's best line.
Suck in the guts, guys. We're the Ghostbusters.
Okay, so I get that Vigo the Carpathian isn't exactly given a ton of exposition or dramatic treatment, and I know he's not a particularly complex character, all of which amounts to a persona that is almost as two-dimensional outside of the painting as it is when it's in it. However, having said this, there is still at least an attempt to establish him, his motivations, and his persona throughout the film. In the first movie, Zool is really just a threat for the Ghostbusters to tackle, and it completely works, but I respect the attempt to try and create a threat that the audience understands a little more, even if it doesn't completely land. So, there are a lot of people who don't like Ghostbusters 2, and that's fine. As I said earlier, it's certainly weaker than the original in almost every way possible. However, some claim that it lacks the quotable comedy seen in the first film, and while it certainly isn't as memorable and doesn't have as much, I would assert it still has a lot of great one-liners and memorable scenes. The dancing toaster, the ghost train, the river of slime, Lewis suiting up, Egon's reaction when asked about a particular childhood toy.
You mean you never even had a slinky?
We had part of a slinky, but I straightened it.
These are all great moments that feel like they could have even been in the original. I know the first film had these too, but considering how much production hell is associated with Ghostbusters 2, it's worth mentioning some of the set pieces. The courthouse fight with the Scoleri brothers, and even the divisive Statue of Liberty sequence, which I admit I have my own reservations about, to be honest, are all still pretty good on a technical level, especially for 1989. They're interesting, diverse, and don't really feel phoned in. Whether they worked or not, you can tell some thought and work went into a lot of these sequences, and for that at least some commendation is due. As I said before, they don't really land quite as well as the first one, but some of them are still pretty fucking cool. This final reason is perhaps the one that has come most into focus in the last 5 years or so. With the latest pseudo-reboot sequel looking like its chief goal is to find and recapture the spirit of the original, and the taste of the fucking awful 2016 reboot still in audiences' mouths, I feel like many may have begun to look at this original sequel in a new light. No, it's not perfect. Heck, some of it's not even very good. But the gang are all here, and the spirit, though weaker, is alive and well. When Venkman throws out a sarcastic line that was clearly an ad-lib, when Egon maintains a serious persona in the most ridiculous of circumstances, when Winston continues to do the job despite clearly feeling like every day he understands what's happening less and less, and when Ray gets excited about some new idea that him and Spengler have cooked up, it feels like Ghostbusters. And that is something that no matter how many reboots or sequels they try and make, we may never get back. I know it's worse, I know it's cheesy, and I know it might not have been as good as it could have been, but next time you get the chance, give Ghostbusters 2 another shot. I think you might feel, at least in part, like you visited some old friends that you've been missing for a while now.